Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar with Focus Labs, how to decide if Rise with SAP is a good choice for you or your company. I want to welcome today Marta Martello, one of our senior consultants. Hello, Marta, how are you?
Hello, Francisco. How are you? I'm Marta. I'm working at VOQUZ as a SAP licensing expert. I have 10 years experience in asset management and 5 years experience as software asset management. I've worked before with large companies on banking and energy sectors, working with a large portfolio of different software editors. So thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, and in the meantime, we have successfully finished a couple of visoryQ projects and Rise with SAP assessments for relatively large clients where we had the opportunity to compare how Rise with SAP shows differences to uh, SAP ECC, SAP S/4HANA. So we'll talk about that today. So let's start looking at the agenda. But maybe before we go there, some news. First of all, thank you, Chipana, for your article in the CIO magazine, Making Sense of SAP Rise for Key Considerations, which was an inspiration for this webinar, where you touched very interesting points that we will take on today and elaborate a bit and mix them with our experience on Rise with SAP evaluations, projects, plannings, etc. And then another thing that we found that I found interesting was these three sourcing, these three paths to Rise with SAP or S/4HANA that Gartner was showing there. Um, so this is basically where SAP is showing you the option of going via the greenfield option. So a new implementation of SAP. It's more work. It is more risky with that, but eventually the outcomes are better too. Then you have the option of moving with a brownfield implementation, which is a longer term thing with less risks. And of course, Gartner is also always showing the opportunity of not doing anything, especially for clients who have well-working systems who are not so much into bringing innovation into their accounting, their finance management, etc. For them, eventually upgrading to S/4HANA is not an option.
Mhm.
This is the last publication of Gartner. Go on, Marta, you wanted to
No,
say
I was
something.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I was going to highlight here and even raise this question for you. It is interesting that you see there in terms of sold deals, we see a high percentage compared to the different paths that customers are still not really yet defined a strategy to follow through for this migration. Do you?
It's surprising. It's surprising. I mean, we are in 2024, so 3 years to go until 2027.
Mhm.
And SAP is pushing hard to sell Rise with SAP, which is their all-in-one offering. And well, I don't know how to make an interpretation of the fact that still something like, if I read it right, 64% of clients haven't even closed a new contract yet.
Mhm.
Um, that shows that clients are still reluctant to make a decision on whether to go there. What are we hearing? Well, first of all, the question of return on investment. Yes, innovation. Yes, we want a new version of the software, but the migration is expensive and takes time. So are we ready to find a justification to do that? Do we have an argumentation towards our CFOs and CEOs on why we want to spend a couple of millions on
Mhm.
upgrading our ERP system? And then the question of, with SAP pushing hard towards RISE, are we willing to give our infrastructure management and application management services to SAP? Is this the right way to go for us? Do we believe that SAP will be able to cope with that? Eventually, this is something that's standing in the way.
Yeah.
Now, we are seeing here the statistic of course for migration status of existing SAP ECC customers. So mostly people who are already on SAP ECC. The
Mhm.
question is how interesting is it for them to migrate to S/4HANA? We'll
Yeah,
see that in the course of the next 3 years. Let's look. But
yeah.
let's look into the agenda. Do you want to briefly explain what we are talking about today?
Okay, so basically today we are going to focus on the main differences between the S/4HANA on-prem solution and the RISE with SAP. What are the main differences? What are actually the pluses and minuses of each of them?
Mhm.
Next, we are going to explore a little bit what are the good companies or which companies may benefit from the RISE with SAP solution, followed by who will not benefit at all from this solution and possibly may have a different course into an on-prem solution. And we are going to as well provide you some structure insights on how to make a decision to move or before moving to RISE with SAP. So finalizing, we are going to show you how can we help you gathering the data necessary to make an informed decision before you enter into a negotiation with SAP.
Very well. So let's start with that. So Rise with SAP, what is it? What's in it for me? Rise with SAP, as you remember,
Mhm,
SAP has been strongly selling this as business transformation as a service. As a service, very important part. So it is not perpetual software anymore. It is a subscription model. And they, in this diagram that you see here, they talk about business project intelligence, tools and services, cloud infrastructure and operations, the business technology platform, SAP Business Network, and SAP S/4HANA Cloud. Now,
mhm,
what is it really? It looks like lots and lots of things, but the reality is the core of what we are talking about today here is SAP S/4HANA on a hyperscaler, subcontracted hyperscaler platform. So SAP is working with the main hyperscalers um, all over the world, and they are building their RISE with SAP systems. So it's an S/4HANA,
mhm,
mostly private installation for the bigger clients, also a shared server installation with a public cloud version of it. And then on top of that, you get some entry-level versions of some tools like Signavio for the business project,
mhm,
process intelligence. You get migration tools to assess your migration maturity. How difficult will it be to migrate from ECC to S/4HANA?
mhm,
You get some BTP credits, so the new development platform of SAP. They want to, stop doing ABAP add-ons on top of SAP and work with a clean core, and then do the developments on top of SAP, the add-ons externally on the BTP platform, and a little entry-level credits for Ariba too, right?
exactly.
So the core is infrastructure. It is SAP S/4HANA on the cloud, and then some add-ons on top of that.
Yes, exactly. But of course, here we do have a lot of factors that may be, how should I say, of crucial decision if a customer is ready or not to migrate to a RISE with SAP. Some of the tools they are presenting in the bundle may not be necessary. We've seen with customers when they receive offers from SAP when doing or thinking of a transition, they do have a set of products that they actually see as a nice to have, but not essential for their transition or their migration. So when dealing with this, what is the best approach here?
Agreed. A very important part. I mean, the set of products that a client has is determining for the decision sometimes, and also for the price impact or cost impact of this decision. But let's look at some of the differences here. And please bear with us. We have made our own valuation, and it may be different from company to company how positive or negatively you perceive some of these differences. So we have SAP S/4HANA on the left side and RISE with SAP on the
Mhm,
right side. So SAP is telling us RISE with SAP is an all-in-one contract, so
mhm,
including infrastructure, services, or basic services, and the software. And if you choose the SAP S/4HANA path, where you have still perpetual licenses, you would have to contract individually your services, your infrastructure as a service, or local data center providers. Now, Is this a disadvantage or is this an advantage? That mostly depends on the size of your company. I've had clients who tell me, well, we have already infrastructure as a service running. We have good control of it. We want to negotiate directly with Microsoft Azure, with IBM Cloud. We don't want an all-in-one contract and pay a markup on top of the infrastructure. So some perceive it as a negative thing to have an all-in-one contract.
Mm-hmm.
Smaller companies mostly as an advantage, but we need to be aware of this difference. What else do we have here? So dependency from the supplier. Of course, the more services and products you assign to a single supplier, the higher the dependency. And it is
Mm-hmm.
clear that the subscription model means higher dependency. You can't just cut the ties. You can't just stop paying maintenance. The data is on a foreign provider. It is not your company anymore who has the hold on the data. If you stop the subscription, you still need to pay the subscription until you can transfer the data, do the migration to a new system. So the dependency definitely is higher. What else do we have here?
If I think one of the most critical points here in terms of strategic differences between S/4HANA and Rise with SAP, and I believe from what I have observed is not being clearly explained to the customers, is the points related to the problem resolution times, which are not well defined in the standard service levels that Rise with SAP provides, and also the tailored option for high availability.
Yeah, I totally agree. So response times are clearly regulated in SAP service descriptions and service level agreements. Problem resolution times in the standard are not resolved, are not declared, determined with a clear
Mhm.
service level. So if you do a special contract with SAP, you may come there, but it is not the default, and you need to be very aware of that. I was just yesterday listening to a client who was telling me, well, this is for us a no-go. This is something that we can't live with. If a system is down for us, we need to know how long it will take for the system to come up again. So high availability and disaster recovery. Apparently, in the beginning, high availability was not an option. Now, with the tailored option of Rise with SAP, SAP is offering high availability too. And then for a 17% additional cost point, you can contract disaster recovery too.
Mhm.
And same goes for some options. For instance, the standard service level with SAP
Mhm.
is 99.7. For an additional cost, you can contract 99.9. So what else do we have in differences? The quality of service or the type of service, let's
Yeah.
say. The smaller clients have maybe one or two persons, even not full-time, doing SAP basis work. Not an issue. You can keep those people even on RISE with SAP, and you will have a solution for your RISE environment. Now, it is, of course, different for a large company who has 20 outsourced dedicated people to manage their SAP servers and systems. Dedicated people who work solely for your company, who know your systems, they know their names, they know what they
Mhm.
are good for, how many people work on every system, what roles and authorizations you have, etc., etc.
Mhm.
Now, SAP's the RISE with SAP service model is
Mhm.
mostly offshore. It is on demand. You send your request to SAP, which is enough for some clients, but eventually not for all of them. So
Yes.
service model is a simpler, standardized service model, even with cloud application services, where you buy credits, but not service levels and full resources. You need
Mhm.
to be aware of that. Is it a good solution for you or not? We have a minus there because it is a simpler solution. It is less service, but eventually it is totally enough for some. So you need to analyze this. You need to be aware of that.
It's true.
So with that, For whom is this a good option? Tell us about that. What is your opinion on that, Marta?
I think for smaller companies with very small IT departments can be a plus. Specifically, when we were talking about, as you mentioned before, with the plus of Rise with SAP with a one for all contract. So we have fewer contracts and administrative tasks for these companies to deal with in terms of contract management. So this can be a very good plus. Um, for companies that have a very um, antiquated infrastructure, this can be a win situation when transitioning to Rise with SAP, because all the infrastructure costs will be under subscription. So this is also a plus for these types of companies. Another
Yeah,
one.
let me say, sorry, to interrupt. It has also an impact on your profit and loss. So we are talking about subscription costs or OPEX against CAPEX. So
Mhm.
depending on the financial shape of your company, especially with smaller companies, being able to deduce the full cost from taxes may be an argument to instead of buying servers, subscribing, so renting those servers with Rise with SAP. So something interesting too there.
Yes. It can also be an interesting solution for companies that have very little customization into their SAP systems. In regards to S/4HANA for the specific option, it would be a minus because they would require to continue to have SAP admins and do it themselves, this type of customization and management, or even outsource to a different company. So this is also something to consider, can be additional costs for the customer. Additionally to this, and not the least, small businesses units of large enterprises can also prove to be a very good example on Rise with SAP would be applicable, because it is a simpler implementation compared to S/4HANA on-prem, which requires a more complex implementation, perhaps step by step. It may have some duration throughout it, may impact operational as well,
Well,
the
mainly,
operational part,
well,
the
mainly,
operational part
mainly
as
on the
well.
server side, right? With SAP S/4HANA, let's say you are implementing in a faraway country and you would need to find a contractor for infrastructure, for services. And if you're a larger company in Europe, you want to contract in Asia, where SAP has subcontracted already some infrastructure suppliers, it is clear the RISE with SAP would be an easier implementation there instead of having three contracts, no
Mhm.
question. So very good. So let's look into the other side of this. So for whom is RISE with SAP eventually not yet the best option? So let's look into that. What are we finding there? What are we hearing from clients when they start speaking about the disadvantages, the worries that they have of RISE with SAP? So mostly, it comes very much to something that you already mentioned in the beginning, which is the problem resolution times at the full bottom of this table. So you need to have clear problem resolution times. When you have a large enterprise, not having an agreed service level for that is not an option. Then, of course, there is no way to not mention this, the service level agreement. SAP is talking today about 99.7. The standard for hyperscalers today is 99.99. Some of them, IBM, for instance, they offer on their IBM Cloud 99.995 with high additional costs, of course, but companies with core application and SAP, banks, etc., may need this. So
Remote benefit.
99.7 means mostly that you have unplanned downtimes of around 2 hours a month, plus around 6 hours of planned downtimes, which is the standard. You need to be aware of this. Is this an issue or not? Depends on your business, depends on the use that you make of SAP or not. Things that you need to consider. If a high market standard service level is conditional for you to have an operative SAP, then you will eventually run into issues with the 99.7. Same with the problem resolution times. Is a problem resolution time not something that you have today? Maybe you have an internal department and they have anyway no service level, then you don't have an issue with that. But if this is something that already is outsourced and controlled, then this is a bit of a big difference. So we mentioned this already, the dedicated staff for SAP management. So be aware of the fact that even if you move to RISE with SAP, this dedicated staff will maybe be able to lower their effort and their cost by some 10, 20%. But mostly you will still have to keep up a lot of the work that you're doing today for uh, batch job escalation, roles and authorizations management, user management. So a lot of the tasks, coping the production data into your quality servers, there is a lot of work around that you already know that you're doing today, and not having dedicated staff for this is not an option for many companies. So
Okay.
companies who have already implemented infrastructure as a service will strongly question if RISE with SAP is an improvement for them. This is at least what we are hearing in the market. So let's say you are on SAP ECC or even already migrated to SAP S/4HANA, and your systems are already on Microsoft Azure, or they are on IBM Cloud, they are on Google Cloud Services. So how is it an improvement to delegate this now to SAP, who is not a specialized company in infrastructure as a service? They are a software company mostly. And this is what clients are perceiving, right? They are just saying, well, we have controlled infrastructure as a service, we have outsourced services, so we don't clearly see the benefit in assigning all of these tasks to a company who is not that specialized and even wants a markup, which is normal. They need to earn money on whatever they do. When they sell things to us, when they sell servers to us, it is likely that the price you will be paying will be a bit higher than when you buy directly from the manufacturer, from the one who is offering the hyperscaler service. Okay, but the question is, if there are so many variables, if the advantages and disadvantages are not the same for every company, how do we get to make a decision about this potentially expensive project, risky project? What is the process there? What are you seeing in your projects, Marta, when you do this kind of projects?
Well, one of the things that it's essential before starting to think about doing a migration, it's the preparation phase, okay? So customers really need to be aware of their software sizing and even optimizations opportunities here, their infrastructure, evaluate or reevaluate service scope, and do an estimation of the cost with migration, either this being financial costs or even the duration it might take and impact in operations. So preparation is one of the first phases that we are actually it is the most important phase or initial phase. And also the other is strategy. So when we are doing a project of this, building a business case for migration into RISE or S/4HANA, this is the first step to take. And in terms of
I agree.
strategy, exactly. It's the most important thing is to be prepared, know exactly your configuration, your environment before even moving forward with a negotiation with SAP. Define your strategy. It's also something that you need to do beforehand. So really assess the software contract modules that you would like, or the infrastructure model, what is the type of service that you will require, and the level of dependency on the suppliers that you will have. And as you mentioned, SLAs maybe have a huge impact on the customer as well.
Yeah, what we are showing here is a standard methodology and process when we are helping a client assessing their S/4HANA strategy for the future. comparing RISE with SAP with what would they have today. So what are we looking into? First of all, we look into the license sizing, understanding what did he purchase in the past and what will he need in the future on S/4HANA or RISE with SAP. Then, of course, we need to assess the system sizing performance. So how much memory, how many servers, how many landscapes do you have, production, pre-production, quality development, sandbox, training, etc. Some clients have only three landscapes, others have eventually up to seven, as we have seen. We need to look into the contracts. Eventually, you close special terms and conditions in the past and want to make sure that you keep them up in the future contracts. We look into the service scope. What are you doing today to maintain your SAP system? What is SAP offering? What could you replace that you have today internally with SAP services? And what is SAP eventually not offering that you will still need in the future and need to take care of? And once we have all of these factors, we start building the financial scenario. So looking into the total cost of ownership of SAP for the mid and long term, OPEX, CAPEX, spend, net present value. And this is all the input that helps you completing the strategic decisions, like the dependency on the supplier, the OPEX or CAPEX question, the question on whether you see a return on investment in your migration to S/4HANA. This is what allows you to start setting up a strategy and making decisions on which way to go and deciding what do you want to request from SAP concretely, what products fit better for you, what product set, what quantities, what path, if it is the green field, the brown field, if it is RISE with SAP or S/4HANA. And this is when you can start negotiating and when you can start targeting the signing of a new contract or not, depending on your situation. So this is a standard process as we offer it on the market today. You can contract this with us for a fixed price, which is depending on the size and complexity of your environment. We have t-shirt sizes for this, and we have successfully done this kind of projects now for probably more than 50 clients already. So make use of our experience here and take advantage of the fact that we are helping clients running through this process all the time, and that you don't have to start from scratch. So, a summary, Marta. What's important? What's the most important factors for clients to think about in this context?
First of all, it's to evaluate the SAP service portfolio. Okay, in the same level as if they were outsourcing an SAP service. So look very closely into what you currently have, reevaluate your current contracts in terms of software, your services as well. And this is the first current infrastructure composition and the future infrastructure needs regarding architecture and dimensions as well. So make a plan for the next 5 years, 10 years. So always plan ahead so you can have a clear vision of what is going to be your TCO, either for S/4HANA on-prem or RISE with SAP. Bear in mind that RISE with SAP, it's a long-term commitment. And many customers may be a little bit averse to it because of this, because you are going to shift from a CAPEX model to an OPEX model. So it is important to consider this as well. So compare the TCO of SAP's offerings, including the software, the infrastructure costs, your application management, and even your migration costs as well. So these are all the things that you should be looking into before you make a decision to move to SAP, because one of the things that you may not be possible to do is to revert, right, Francisco?
Exactly, and it seems when you speak with salespeople, software salespeople, that buying software is the solution for everything. You speak with consultants, consulting is the solution for everything. So that's an old saying. And start the rethinking process here. What we are saying is you do have options. In fact, you have a lot of options. Don't let anyone tell you that there is only one single clear path and RISE with SAP is the answer to any question. SAP has a clear strategy towards RISE with SAP, and becoming a software as a service company is an honorable target. I totally understand that. But you as a company have your own targets, and you need to question, is this the right path for me too? Is this the right moment for me too? Both in terms of the development of SAP, but also in terms of do we have the financing now? Do we have the return on investment of going to RISE with SAP to S/4HANA right now? So we have a clear proven methodology to run you through this process, assess the situation, and just get to the best possible contract. That's the target, whatever it is. The best possible contract may be the one you have today, and you shouldn't change it, or it may be something totally different on RISE with SAP. So let's assess this. Let's look cleanly into that. Let's be critical. Let's be transparent about your requirements, and we'll get there. So with this, I want to thank you all for listening to us, but bear with us. We are going now over to the Q&A session where you can ask us your particular questions, the relevant things for your company, and we'll gladly help you through this. So let's start with the Q&A session. And by the way, thank you very much, Marta, for your contribution today.
Thank you, Francisco, for having me.
Here we go. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the webinar. Welcome, Tony Wise. For everyone, Tony Wise is leading the business in APAC and the Middle East. What's your speciality? What's your background? So people know who they're talking to. Hang on a second. I think you're in mute. Let me just check that.
I think I'll be okay now. Yeah. Hi. I've been working in SAP for many more years than I care to disclose. It counts into decades rather than years. I used to manage SAP's audit practice in Asia Pacific. In my previous role, I set up and managed a global SAP advisory practice for a very large software company. And here I am today working for VOQUZ Labs. As you say, I manage APAC and Middle East at the moment. In previous lives, I had licensing experience at Oracle and BEA and Business Objects. So yeah, I think I'm demonstrating that I'm at least as old as I look.
Thanks. I'm not sure about the last one. I won't comment on that, but I'm thankful that you're here. And I'll be lost without you. I'm going to be moderating what we're doing, going through the questions and a poll. And we're going to try to answer all of your questions that came in via the chat, but also via email. And before we actually hit it off with the questions, we'd like to go through a short, simple survey. So we just see where we all stand with RISE with SAP. It's anonymous, so no names in there. Don't worry about compliance in your company. It's just for this round, so we all see where we stand. I'm going to hit it off straight away. This is the part where multitasking comes in. I'm going to try and manage. You should see this coming up on your screen. And the first question is, do you feel pressure to switch to RISE with SAP? For what reason ever? Is it the timing? Is it SAP themselves with their offering and their contacting? I'm going to leave this poll open, this question open for another 5 seconds before I close it. And then we're going to have a look at the results altogether. Still moving. There's still something happening. Closing in 3 seconds from now. So please make your clicks. I'm going to close the question now. And let's have a look at the results. So, okay, 64% feel pressure to switch to RISE with SAP. Is this something common, Tony? Is this something you hear about quite a lot?
Yeah, I'm surprised it's so low, actually.
Okay.
Because SAP is actually putting a lot of pressure on customers. I mean, it's an interesting dynamic, to be honest with you. Yes, we know that SAP are putting enormous pressure on customers to move to RISE. We know that SAP are making it difficult for customers to buy new on-premise licenses, for example, or to get reasonable pricing from them. So we know from the SAP side, there's definitely pressure. It's interesting. I do work with some customers who seem to be putting pressure on themselves to move to RISE. During the webinar, Francisco and Marta spoke about, at the end particularly, they spoke about the options that are available. And I think that in customer land, there is a perception, particularly in my region, but globally, that RISE is the only option to deal with SAP. And so there's this sort of customer-led pressure in some cases as well. The no, the 36% who say no, is actually to a certain extent quite reassuring, because the more people who don't feel the pressure, be it internal or external, it means the more pressure that SAP is under to come up with an offering that makes sense, and also to give flexibility. So it's an interesting question.
Let's jump to the next one, and I'm gonna put it on the screen in a second, and here we go. Do you know, I mean, this is basically leading to the title of the webinar, so I could have phrased this: do you know how to check whether RISE with SAP is a good choice for you? Would you even sort of know what elements and what parameters to look at in your company to say, okay, this is for me, this is for us, this is going to work mid and long term? Going to leave this open for another 5 seconds from now, so please click your way through. And by the way, we're going to try and summarize this in our follow-up emails, where you're going to receive the link to the recording of this webinar. I'm going to show you what the results were. So we have this. Closing the question now and showing you the results, Tony. Here we go. So, okay, I mean, there is potential for answering the need to answer that question. What do you think?
This is interesting, because obviously the webinar.
I'm sorry, I think not everyone can see the screen. I'm sorry about that. So it's 27% said yes, we do know how to check whether RISE is for us, and 73% say no. Excuse me for interrupting, Tony. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. It's a little bit of a disappointing answer, to be honest with you, because obviously our last 3 or 4 webinars have been really concentrating on what people need to do to check whether RISE is right for them. It does, I guess, stress that RISE is a complex issue. It's not just your licenses. That there's so much more to take into account. There's the infrastructure, there's the services, there's everything that goes into the management of your SAP estate. All I can say is if you're looking at RISE and you need to know how to check, please feel free to contact me or my colleagues at VOQUZ Labs, where we're more than happy to help. And I'm sorry for the
maybe the reason was yeah, it's legitimate, I would say. Maybe it's sort of, it's unsure because we can cover certain things on a general level, give general answers, but maybe this is about, you know, having a look at an individual situation and having differences and still being insecure. So as you said, maybe contacting us might be the best way to get an individual answer.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm hoping that these webinars and all the information that we publish does give people some insight into what they need to do. But as I say, it is a complex subject. Please feel free to call us.
I'll jump to the third one out of 4. And you should see it coming up on your screen now. And the question is, do you understand the main differences between S/4HANA on-premise and RISE with SAP? Do you understand the main differences between S/4HANA on-premise and RISE with SAP? Gonna leave this open for another 5 seconds. The question seems a bit, might seem a bit dull, but there are some that need to be considered as far as I understood. Let me just show you the results on this, Tony. And we should have it here now. It's 80% say yes, of course, and 20% say no, not sure about the exact differences. What do you think of this?
Okay, it's almost a reversal to the previous answer, isn't it? There are major differences, and of course the major difference from a commercial perspective is how you contract with SAP. So S/4HANA on-premise, you're still using your perpetual licenses. You own, in inverted commas, the license, and you can do what you like with them within the confines of the contract. RISE, as we know, a subscription-based model, heavily dependent on SAP, even more so than in the on-premise world. I'm very gratified that most people understand that there are fundamental differences. Going back to the last poll question, what you actually do to quantify and evaluate the differences and to work out whether they're right for you or how they impact your business, I think that seems to be the gist of these poll answers today. That yes, people are very aware there are differences, but whether or not they impact them, what the significance is, how they evaluate it, how they quantify it, that appears to be where people are still struggling.
Including the consequences. Get you. Jumping to the last one. Throwing this on the screen in a second. You should be able to see it now. Would you like to explore your options before making far-reaching decisions? You know, people usually sort of tend to have a meeting and try to decide what to do, but without being able to compare everything that should be on the table before you make the decision. So would you like to be able to do that before everything is set up? I'm going to leave this open. I hope this might be 100% to 0.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't want to influence the vote, but I really hope it's 100% that says yes.
We might be a bit surprised, not too much. I'm going to show you in 4 seconds from now, leaving this open so everyone can make their choice. Because maybe the no, I hope the no could mean I already know all my options because I've been talking to VOQUZ Labs or anyone else who's an expert in the field, but not just, you know, flow with it. Closing the question now and showing the results. And here we go. 94% said, yeah, well, that would be really nice if I would know what I'm talking about before I make a decision. And 6% might not know how or might already be past that point. What do you think?
Let's assume that 6% already know and already have explored it. Because I think the thing to emphasize with this conversation is, as I mentioned before, RISE is complex. And it's not like in the old days where, you know, you buy 20 or 30 additional licenses and, you know, whether you've got it right or wrong, it's not a huge implication for you. If you get this decision wrong, this is going to impact your business for the next decade at least. So taking the time, making the effort to evaluate this is, in my opinion, crucial.
So we could have rephrased this. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So I do know some customers who've sort of jumped into this because I think we've discussed on previous webinars, SAP loves to target the C-level and make this sound all very easy and very simplistic. And if you go down this path, everything's going to be wonderful and there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And so for that type of customer, sometimes the IT department and procurement are running around like headless chickens, just trying to make sense of it. But hopefully pragmatism sets in, and yes, people take a breath and take the time to actually really evaluate.
So this might be about not even knowing that there are options other than what's being proposed to them in that very conversation, maybe even with a salesperson rather than with a technical person from SAP and stuff.
Exactly. I mean, SAP loves to make this sound, as I say, simple, and they're very, very good at going into the C-level, as I mentioned, and pitching down. And then suddenly everyone in the organization who actually knows the business and knows the IT and knows what's involved sometimes struggle to get that message across. So yeah, I agree.
Thanks for that, Tony. Thanks to everybody for participating. It's actually good to have an overview to see where we all stand. Jump over to the questions now. I have a few sources where to read them out from some from the chat, some from that came in via email. If we don't manage to answer them all, and I'm afraid we won't, there is quite a lot of them this time, we will get back to you individually via email. So the first one is talking about the proposal. Can you help with evaluating a specific RISE proposal?
Yes. Yeah, that didn't take long at all. That's exactly one of our core offerings at the moment. The visoryQ service combined with samQ does exactly that. It looks at your current environment, it looks at your optimal licensing, and then it does the analysis around full TCO of staying as you are, moving to S/4HANA on-prem or with a hyperscaler, and looking at the RISE offering as well, and really getting to grips with what it means and what's missing and what's superfluous. The answer is yes.
Excellent. Do we have a time scope on that? Like, how long does it take to actually have a look at everything?
Tiny piece of a piece of string, because obviously different customers have different levels of complexity. But 8 to 12 weeks, something of that nature, would be a reasonable guideline. Of course, with massive customers, that this is a 6-month affair. With very small customers, it can be done obviously much quicker.
Excellent. So everyone has a figure now. The next one is, someone is confused whether RISE with SAP is the same as SAP S/4HANA Private Cloud.
Okay. So S/4HANA Private Cloud is actually a component of RISE. So S/4HANA Private Cloud is essentially your ERP, and obviously RISE is your ERP plus blah 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 that we've been talking about today. That's a simple answer. There's lots of complexity, but at a simple level, that's an answer.
Yeah, just as I said, obviously we're going to try and give it sort of a general direction, trying to answer. There is a few technical questions also. If this gets too much or too specific, as I said, we're going to get back to you individually. We're going to try to give sort of a frame around the question. And the next one is, out of experience, do you know what is the profile of companies going to RISE? Small, medium, big companies can even say, can you make that difference? Does it apply to all industry sectors? I understood before you actually, I understood that it's for smaller ones, it might be easy because there is not so much cleanup to do because you start from scratch. Is that right?
SAP has different messages in different regions, to be perfectly honest with you. When I hear webinars and stuff in DACH, for example, I hear SAP being relatively pragmatic, that RISE is not for everybody. And yes, it tends to be that the more complex you are and the larger you are, that it makes it more challenging to move to RISE, certainly, although we have worked with some very large customers. So yes, in the SME space, you would think it would be an easier proposition, and you'd think that internally they would have less current, incumbent skill sets. So farming that out to SAP might make more sense in those areas. So in general, smaller or SME customers, you would believe, and SAP started when they first launched this, that was the sort of message that was coming out. It really was attractive to the SME space. That's not the message that's coming out particularly in my region at the moment. SAP is telling everyone that RISE is the way to go. Again, it depends. I'm not going to say that big customers can't move to RISE, and I'm not going to say that small customers should move to RISE. It just depends on your organization and your requirements. Again, I'm not trying to hedge my answer. It's just the reality.
There is somebody who's quite sure about his reality. This is a comment. I'm just going to read it out. My answer to the last question, because I no longer need to explore any options, I'm very sure RISE is not the right option for me. So there are people who has actually find an answer for them.
And you'll be,
yeah.
this is, I'll just comment on that actually. We've done quite a lot of research with our partners, and there are a number of ECC and S/4HANA on-prem customers who are adamant they will not move to RISE. Whether it's because they just want to wait and see, or whether or not they remember what HANA Enterprise Cloud offering used to be like and how that was not exactly well received, or whether they just don't like the idea of giving their whole SAP environment and their infrastructure to SAP and being locked in forever into whatever SAP decides to do. But there definitely is a significant percentage of customers who have no intention of moving to RISE in the foreseeable future.
Oh,
they still need to learn how to have that conversation with SAP though, and how to push back and to understand what their options are when SAP tries to tell them that they won't sell them any more on-premise licenses. So there's lots of dynamics at play in this conversation.
I'm going to add to the last comment because the colleague has just replied, says it's just might not be a common answer for everyone, as he is not a SAP customer, he's a SAP architect. So everyone can sort of interpret this whatever way they like. Leading to that, there's a couple of technical questions there. Before that, there is one asking, does a licensing cleanup, as like taking care of your licenses, does that need to be taken care of first before you move to RISE or before you need anything? Does that make sense, or can I do it the other way around, move and then start cleaning my stuff up, which is probably a more expensive way? Is it?
Once you sign the new contract with lots of rubbish, then it becomes just as difficult as it always has been with SAP to change your contract. So we would always recommend, whether you're moving to RISE, whether you're renegotiating on-premise, whatever you're doing, we would always recommend that you clean up and understand your existing environment, licensing, and of course understand your future requirements as well. Because the last thing you want to do is negotiate a contract with SAP of any shape or form and find the next moment that you're non-compliant or need to get additional licenses. So make sure that during that negotiation, you get the right licenses at the right price with the right terms and conditions. A trite phrase, but no, 100% please clean up first. Whether you use a third party like ourselves or whether you do it yourselves, however you approach it, 100% please do it.
There is another one that's actually a question to SAP, but maybe you can help on a strategic view on it. I'm going to read it out as it is. For large organizations with big SAP spends, how can they ensure similar priority support and services as they were consuming on S/4HANA, which is probably not available on RISE, without paying any additional premium? So how is it possible?
It's not. You will be paying more for the options in a RISE contract. Of course, how much you pay overall is down to your negotiation skills, and so whether or not customer X would pay the same as customer Y for getting the same services, that's down to the negotiation. But the simple answer to the question is SAP will say you need to pay more to get more. The bigger problem is that how do you guarantee you get the services you pay for anyway? So for example, if you pay for an extra SLA, so 99.5 to 99.7 or whatever figure it is, if you pay for the extra SLA, and yet there's nothing in the contract that talks about problem resolution times, then where do you even get value from that? So this is something that Francisco raised in the webinar. Problem resolution is a big issue in the RISE contract that customers really need to focus on in that negotiation. How do you guarantee, and what are the penalties are well and good, but if you are a company that absolutely depends upon your SAP system and it's down for a day and SAP can't even give you a resolution time, then it's no good to you whatsoever, is it? So the answer is A, negotiation, but B, also evaluate the result of your negotiation as well. And this comes back to, is RISE right for you? it's just one of those elements.
So maybe phrasing it hard, but it's like, don't go into the trap first and then look for, you know, ways out, but actually think about it before you enter a situation like that.
Well, arguably don't enter the trap in the first place. Yeah. Or at least read the sign that says minefield.
This one actually might be about figures. Not sure where you go there, but maybe there is a general approach to it. What is the license model in RISE with SAP? What is the cost of a nominal license user? Or can we actually talk about savings and spends here? Is that something you can help with?
But the model is subscription, as you know, so it's a monthly stroke annual multi-year contract. And yes, there is a cost per line item. SAP doesn't publish the line item costs, of course, so that's something else that we always recommend that customers get, so they get a breakdown of the pricing. SAP's pricing actually differs from country to country, so even though you can't see the pricing, take it from me that it is different from country to country. So I can't give you a definitive price for your, I can for your country, but I can't give you one globally. And this comes again back to, let's do your cleanup first. Let's understand what your true requirements are. Let's make sure we don't fall into the trap of counting our users based on authorization that SAP tries to tell you you need to do, and that you actually do it on real usage requirements. So subscription model largely based on FUE. The FUE dictates the t-shirt sizing you get as well. Pricing differs. You want line item pricing. Visibility is what you should be aiming for. I'm sorry, Stefan, we've run out of time. I know, I apologize.
I just wanted to say that it looks like we could go on for another hour. We have quite a few, I think over 15 questions that are open. We're going to come back to you, Tony. Thanks for your time. Thanks for the expertise. You guys can find Tony via LinkedIn, and obviously get in contact with us via labs@voquuzlabs.com. No worries about that. We're going to share the recording, and we have plenty of opportunities to get in contact with us, and we're going to go and follow up those questions. Tony.
Thanks to everyone. Thanks especially for people who ask questions, but thanks to everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.